Dajahao, hi guys, it's Shanae and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm continuing my read-along of ErHa Volume 8. We're almost done. I think we have 2 sessions left, this one included. So yeah, I hope you guys will enjoy it, and without further ado, let's get into it. Also, sorry for this random cotton pad here. I had my blood drawn and I'm just kind of keeping it there for safety's sake at the moment. Okay, 200... We're on page 253, chapter 265. Shimei mirrored. That does not sound good. When a candle burned out, only darkness lingered. When a fire went out, only ashes remained. Yet even darkness was once bright, and even ashes were once warm. Moran too had once had days of light and warmth, but no one would know, and no one would care. He had spent his last sparks of spiritual energy. He watched as the birds scattered and the undead soldiers crumpled, watched as the living regained their senses and the pawns fell away. He saw the black tide about to swallow Shizun Peak retreating, and watched as the apocalypse was averted. All of them thought him a despicable criminal, and he didn't disagree. But the demon had finally done something worthy of a god. Chuaning was his candle, and he had clumsily followed his light. Gah! Renar! Fuzzily, he heard people calling his name. He saw Shumeng stumbling forward out of the corner of his eye, saw Xu Zhengyong and Madame Wang breaking through the crowd and running towards him. Their voices brought him profound relief. He showed his teeth, attempting to smile, but tears streaked down his blood-stained face. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault," but his throat was choked with sobs, and he could only plead, "Don't hate me." I really, really loved all of you. I loved Auntie and Uncle, loved Shizun Peak, loved the stolen warmth and stolen family. Auntie, Uncle, Shumeng, please don't hate me. The dread army was beaten back. Moran collapsed into the dirt. When Chuaning had fainted from his wounds in the past life, his white robes had been stained with blood, but he had still seemed pristine. He and Moran were not the same. Moran had always been caked in filth. In the moment before he lost consciousness, Moran felt Madame Wang's soft embrace. "Renar," she cried, voice cracking with her heartbreak. He heard Xu Zhengyong confronting Mu Yanli. "A plot?" he was shouting. "What plot? If he summoned these chess pieces, why would he go so far to save us?" He heard Shumeng howling. "Don't touch him! Don't touch him! Don't take him away!" Everything was a mess. Moran wanted to explain. He had more to say, but he was so very, very tired. He closed his eyes. I'm hoping that this went against Shimei's plan. That, like, Shimei thought Moran wouldn't be able to do this because of how corrupt he was in the past lifetime. Oh, what a way to start a read-along. Like, I don't know how many pages we're gonna be able to get through if I just keep crying. Okay. In Mount Zhao's Hall of Sages, the ever-bright lamps glowed steadily. The well candles were as thick and stout as bowls. Here there was no light from the stars or sun. Only the candles, weeping their waxen tears, tracked the passage of time. Ooh, that's a beautiful sentence. Shimei sat on the dais in a cloak of white fox fur. His forehead rested in his hand, eyes closed in a meditative repose. This had been Xu Shuanglin's preferred seat. Shimei had watched as Xu Shuanglin refined his Zhenlong chess pieces and created heaven and hell, wishing wholeheartedly to bring his Shizun back to life. He'd found Xu Shuanglin terribly interesting. It was a shame he couldn't keep him around in the end. Before Shimei lay an inspelled silken scroll, covered in flaring words and all manner of colorless dots. This was the sand table Tai Jin had created for the Genlong chess formation. Each black dot represented a black Genlong chess piece. Silver connoted white pieces and silver connoted white pieces and red the discarded pawns. The small squares scattered over the scroll represented their enemies. With the sand table before him, he had a clear view of the battle no matter where he was. Shimei had unrolled the scroll upon the table, but only glanced at it. He had only set it up out of idle curiosity. He knew precisely what Moran would choose. Ta Jin would have had countless paths out of the snare, but Mo Zongshi had only one. There was nothing much to observe. I hate how right he is. I just wonder how the hell are we supposed to get ahead of him if everything is already this way. Like, it feels very hopeless, and considering we still have so many volumes left, I just wonder, is it worth continuing to read? Ugh. After a while, the door of the hall opened. Soft footsteps rustled through the room. Shimei didn't look up. "You're here?" A man's feet came to a stop upon the well-lit brick floor. He wore a snow-white cloak, the edge of his hood pulled low to shadow his face. He stood in the center of the hall with perfect poise. When he spoke, his voice was low but clear. "I just got word that Moran shattered all of the pawns Tai Jin created." Oh no, who do we have to thank for, like, who else is working with Shimei? Who else do we have to worry about? Shimei's eyelashes didn't so much as flutter. He said, peaceably. "It's not like he had much of a choice. Ta Jin's body is falling apart. Those chess pieces he made started draining your spiritual energy ages ago. Now that Moran's used his core to break them, you'll be free of them as well. This is a good thing." "Oh?" Shimei smiled. "Are you worried about me?" The man in white didn't answer. After a long beat, he asked, "What will you do next?" "The plan hasn't changed." Shimei stirred at last. Stretching, he blinked open those peach blossom eyes, and the whole room brightened with his smile. "Haven't we gone over this? I know you've planned it out, but you must think this through. Moran paid a heavy price to stop those Genlong chess pieces. Those cultivators aren't idiots. There's no way they won't become suspicious." Shimei smiled. "I know what you mean, averting a terrible disaster for the cultivation world by shattering his own core. What a hero. Do you think the cultivation realm will interrogate their heroes?" Shimei didn't answer right away. Still smiling, he wove his slender fingers together and propped his chin on top. "Don't you think Moran's choice resembles Chuaning's actions in the past life?" he asked sweetly. I just want to know how he knew. Like, how did he survive and how did he know? The two don't make sense to me. I feel like I'm either forgetting something that they already explained, or there's something that still isn't being explained to us that would make this make more sense. The man in white was quiet a moment. "Yes, a direct reenactment, more or less. Then let me ask you this. When Chuaning was taken prisoner by Ta Jin, how many people from the cultivation world cared? How many remembered him?" Silence. The smile on Shimei's face grew more radiant still. "Barely anyone, wasn't it? I've told you before, Shimeng went everywhere seeking aid. In the beginning, there were people who shed a tear or two and promised to help him storm Shizun Peak in a rescue mission. But what then? All those promises were empty air in the face of Ta Jin's might. As time passed, as those feelings faded, those same people began to find Shimeng irritating. When he next came begging, they changed their tune. How long has Chuaning been there? They asked. Who knows if he's still alive? Is it worth sacrificing people's lives for a man who might very well already be dead? The man in white shook his head. No one knew what had happened to Chuaning. Moran is right there in their midst, alive and well. Whatever their capacity for cruelty, they won't harm someone who just bled for the cultivation realm. You know, considering the way they treated, what was his name? Oh, how am I forgetting his name? I can't believe I'm hitting a blank. What was his name? The guy who died on Mount Zhao. The one who I love and I can't believe they killed off. The one who died in the flames. How am I forgetting his name now? But the way that they treated him, I wouldn't be surprised if they treated Moran the exact same. But I hate it because then it just means that they're playing right into Shimei's hands once more. I hate how he is somehow predicting everything. Like, it's not completely unbelievable, but it's highly infuriating and frustrating. Shimei couldn't help but sigh. Oh, you're still young, still naive. He rolled up a scroll on the table. The pawn markings had all turned red, out of commission. Unbothered, he stuffed it back into his chenkun pouch. Everyone's noble when it doesn't touch their own interests. Their true nature emerges when it's their turn to suffer. His slender fingers knotted the string of the chenkun pouch. To them, he said as he looked up, Moran might be an innocent man framed, or he might be a duplicitous villain. It'd be a shame to harm an innocent man, of course, but sparing a villain would bring bloody catastrophe down upon the entire cultivation world. Seeing his listener rapt with attention, Shimei continued eagerly. Perhaps he averted disaster by shattering his spiritual core, but too many things about him are suspicious. People are mistrustful by nature. Their first priority is to rid themselves of anything that could pose a threat to them. This little detour wouldn't change the outcome. Then you think Tianyan Pavilion will still take Moran? Asked the man in white. Shimei smiled. Tianyan Pavilion is on our side and everything's going according to plan. Of course they'll take him. Once we have the shards of Moran's spiritual core, Tashinjin will be pliable again. With his strength, there's nothing we can't accomplish. It's interesting that he still needs Moran to do his bidding. Like, he doesn't have the ability to do it on his own. Now, you could argue maybe the fact that he can control Moran means he has the ability. It's just in an indirect way. But there's something very cowardly to me about the way that Shimei goes about these things. It's so frustrating. I guess it's I wanted to say possible that the person in white is another Shimei, considering the chapter title. And that there's currently 2 Shimeis in the same way that there are 2 Morans. Because I just can't think of, from the people who are remaining, who would be his accomplice, you know? But also I love how that he was just like, oh, they're on our side, so you're telling me Tianyan Pavilion is knowingly on your side or unknowingly? Because if they're knowingly on your side, then the hypocrisy really is running very deep. The man in white hesitated. You've had control of him for close to a decade in the other world. What have you accomplished? Shimei froze, as if the man's directness had needled him. Frowning, he didn't respond for a long beat. What do you mean by this? He asked, at last, eyes narrowing. Are you questioning me? No, I'm not. The man in white sighed. We have the same goal in mind. I'm afraid no one on earth knows you better than I do. Sounds an awful lot like it might be the other Shimei. Shimei's expression thawed somewhat, but his beautiful eyes remained fixed on the man's face, as if assessing the truth of his words. Pursing his thin lips, he said, It's good that you understand. Everything I've done is to take back what's ours. All of our sacrifices have been unavoidable. Of course. You're right, you know me best, murmured Shimei. In these 2 lifetimes, I've lived every day on a knife's edge. There's truly no one I can trust aside from you. He paused. Don't let me down. I feel like it has to be the younger him. But then, can he truly trust himself considering the type of person he is? Shimei's voice seemed to hover in the air like a butterfly after the words had left his lips. A long, fraught silence passed before the man in white spoke once more. There's a question I've been meaning to ask you, he said, placid. What is it? Overhead, storm clouds rolled in around Mount Zhao. Leaves rustled on the slopes. The wind howled pitifully, like the wailing of 1,000 displaced wandering souls. I want to know what you sacrificed for our goal in the past life. Tell me the truth. At this unexpected line of questioning, a furrow appeared between Shimei's brows. His eyes glinted. Didn't I tell you ages ago? A few innocent people had to die, but this is to be expected. Just think about what we've gone through, and then you'll... No. You're avoiding the question. What did you sacrifice? Did you actually sacrifice anything besides your humanity? Did you sacrifice loved ones? Did you sacrifice yourself? How many is a few? The man in white's soft yet determined voice cut through Shimei's answer, rendering him mute. His brows knit in a dark scowl, a look wholly uncharacteristic on his features. Shimei had always been mild and reserved, but it seemed he didn't care about baring his fangs in front of this man, as if his listener couldn't see the murderous intent on his face at all. A few is a few. Shall I make a registry for all the innocent dead so you can personally look it over? That says quite enough. Like, the fact that you can't just say 5 people, these are their names. The fact that you think there's enough to fill a registry is concerning. And I mean, we know it, but clearly this person's been kept somewhat in the dark about things. The man in white chuckled. Enough, he murmured. You know as well as I do that I wouldn't be looking anything over anymore. Huh. Hold on. Okay, that feels like confirmation that it's this lifetime Shimei. That the guy we've been following along isn't the consciousness of this lifetime Shimei in the current Shimei's body. His eyes haven't magically healed. This timeline Shimei genuinely lost his eyesight and is genuinely just kind of following his other self's advice. That's what I'm potentially getting from the dialogue right now. Because he was like, oh yeah, no, you know, with my healing skills, it's totally plausible that I can just magically heal my eyes. But what if that was never him to begin with. Silence stretched between them. I've always done my best to help you, the man in white said. I've assisted you for years, ever since you found me and told me about the previous lifetime. When you concealed yourself within Goyir, I did everything you asked of me from a certain peak. Even when I felt confused and unsure, I knew your thoughts and goals were my own. For the sake of this mission of ours, I've long stopped caring whether I live or die. I never cared about sacrificing myself as long as we could succeed. I thought you were the same. Yay! This is interesting, because I had thought there was only the one version of Moran. I don't, like, the more I think about it, the more I don't know how I misconstrued that, because I'm pretty sure they basically spelled it out to us, that there were still, I said Moran, I meant Shimei, that there were two Shimeis going on, but I'm only sure of it now, myself. And yeah, that could be a very interesting turn of events if suddenly he had to contend with fighting against himself. Though, unfortunately, I don't know what much the younger version of Shimei could do that the older version of Shimei wouldn't anticipate. Shimei surged to his feet and paced around the room. What do you mean by that? You said you stopped caring whether you lived or died. Are you implying I'm a coward who'd do anything to keep my life? Where's the lie? He shook out his sleeves, staring icily at the white-clothed man. If you knew what kind of person I am, you'd never imply anything of the sort. I do know, said the man in white, but I've been thinking. After you faked your death in the previous lifetime and stepped behind the scenes as Huabi Nun, you had 10 years to control the Go flower in Moran's heart. 8, Shimei corrected him. Laser, Chuaning split his soles and pushed what remained inside Moran, thus giving him back some of his original nature. He was under my control for 8 years before he killed himself, not 10. Okay, 8 years then. I think that makes it better. In those 8 years, you intensified the hatred in his heart and goaded him into committing all sorts of atrocities. But he drifted further and further from our original plan. Why didn't you stop him then? Shimei laughed from sheer anger. Do you know how hard it is to create one flower of eightfold sorrow? A pause. I do. Do you know the enchantments would never work a second time on someone who's already had the curse uprooted? I do. Shimei wasn't smiling anymore. Fury flashed in his eyes. Then what are you trying to say? What would you have done if it were you? The man in white paused, then sighed. Haven't you decided for me? You know, the self-roasting going on right now, I was not anticipating, but I'm greatly enjoying it. It's interesting to me how he's conflating things, because younger Shimei asked a very simple question. Why didn't you stop this man when you saw things going wrong? Why didn't you guide things in the correct direction? Why did you allow the hatred to spiral in the way that it did? And then the older Shimei went in a completely different direction that bears very little connection to that. Like, him being able to create a second flower of hatred wouldn't fix the issue with Moran. The two have nothing to do with each other. He should have, done something else that wasn't to do with the eightfold flower, whatever, because clearly that had already failed. And if he's so amazing at coming up with all of these contingency plans, he should have like been able to identify, okay, that's an issue, and refocused, reshaped. But he didn't. He's completely changing the topic almost, it feels like. Shimei fell silent. I've never done those things or walked that path myself. I know I'd make the same choice if it were me in your place, but... Shimei narrowed his eyes, stalking down the stairs at the foot of the dais. He came to a stop before the man in white. But what? I still have guilt on my conscience. Yeah, because you allowed someone to do that. Like, you heard about the past life and you were like, that sounds good. I'm totally keen to walk that path again in some way, shape, or form by assisting this person. There was a moment of dead silence. Then Shimei grabbed the stranger by the lapels. His incomparable, beautiful hand, with that serpent ring coiled around his delicate thumb, was now fisted tightly in the stranger's robes as tendons bulged from his fair skin. Guilt on your conscience? What difference is there between you and me? Everything we've done thus far, did you not plot each and every move with me? Did you not perfectly understand what each entailed? What happened to all the ruthlessness you had back then? Yet now you feel guilty. Why? Every word came pushed through gritted teeth. Is it because Shushwanglin saw you as a friend, although you lied to him every step of the way? Do you feel guilt because you taught him a fake rebirth technique so he'd open the space-time gate for us? He never sold me out. The man in white whispered, even until death. Shimei blinked, confusion and anger swirling in his eyes. Very well. I did wonder what had you so worked up. What else? You saw those thousands of pawns and felt pity for them? You blame yourself. The man in white remained calm in the face of this outburst. Did you never blame yourself? Not even a little? Based on his conversation with Chuaning and Moran, no. He thinks he's completely blameless in all this just because he's hiring someone to do it. And it's funny because he has the cognizance to be like, oh, whatever I'm guilty of, you're also guilty of because you helped me achieve it, but also I'm blameless. It's a very interesting thing to experience, and along with that, I'm gonna give Meatbun the benefit of the doubt and assume that she doesn't still think we don't know this is the younger Shimei. So the fact that she keeps saying the stranger, the stranger, the stranger really shows you how disconnected Shimei is from his past self. He's not saying like my younger self or the other Shimei, any kind of identifier. Like, he could have been identifying himself as Wabinan this entire time and viewing the younger self as Shimei. But no, he keeps saying the stranger, like creating that massive distance between them that shouldn't exist. Shimei ground his teeth, madness and derision flashing in his gaze. He stared at the man before him for a very long time, as if gazing upon a colossal disappointment or a sickening traitor. Then, as if a truly cruel thought had come to his mind, he burst out laughing. He unsheathed his venomous claws and drove them into the man's flesh. Very well, very well. You said so many pretty words, what with all your guilt and self-blame. But in the end, it's something else you're really upset about, isn't it? The glint in Shimei's eyes brightened at the sight of the man's brows furrowing in confusion. Like a vulture wheeling in the sky, hovering as he waited for his prey's final rattling breath before swooping down to dine. coming to interrogate me like this. You believe you feel remorse after seeing all those Zhenlong pawns at work. You believe you feel regret after watching Shu Shuanglin die. But I know you. I know your heart better than anyone. Guilt and self-blame don't exist in you. You and I are equally cold and unfeeling. The vulture's wings cast the long shadow of death, beating down lower and darker. You feel no remorse at all. Stop fooling yourself. He smiled only once, proud and composed. Shi Mingjing was always at his most graceful and poised when holding someone else by the throat. If you ask me, he said slowly, what you really mourn is the loss of your eyes. Shimei whipped out the dagger at his waist. Using the hilt, he raised the hood of the man's white cloak until it fell back on the man's shoulders. Beneath that fur-trimmed hood was a face of astonishing beauty, its exquisite features elegant beyond compare. Face to face, the two men were identical, save that the white cloaked Shimei's eyes were obscured by a white ribbon, a few tendrils of dark hair falling before it. Shimei stared at the man, now stripped of his hood, and scoffed. Shi Mingjing, take a good look at yourself. You only grieve that you've sacrificed more than I have. And you don't think that's gonna brew resentment and conflict between the two of you? You think it wise to point that out to him? The situation on Mount Zhao was critical. To distract Chuaning, we had to use the last resort we discussed. With so many people watching, we couldn't just put on an act. You were blinded while I was unharmed. You're jealous. If I were jealous, I wouldn't have agreed to the plan in the first place. I wouldn't have prepared to sacrifice myself in the worst case. It doesn't matter which one of us survives to finish this, as long as one of us does. But why would I? Before he could finish, the other Shimei cut him off with a sharp, "Who's there?" The dagger in his hand flew out, burying itself in the stone pillar. Shimei turned, voice cold. "Come out." It's very interesting because he is so confident about his own assessment of the situation that he doesn't for a moment think, okay, wait, I'm making an enemy of myself. So everything I can do, this person can also do. This person knows my tactics. And I'm just somehow confident that I'm gonna outwit myself or not make an enemy of myself in some way, despite how fickle he actually is. It's a very, very interesting cognitive dissonance. And how I hope it backfires on him. But also we have art. It's beautiful and horrible at the same time. Look at it. Okay. Huang Xiaoye emerged from behind the pillar, looking much worse for wear. He'd betrayed all the other cultivators on Mount Zhao in search of Rufeng Sect's legendary hidden treasure chamber. Unfortunately, he triggered a mechanism and ended up locking his entire party inside the chamber. The treasure trove of Rufeng Sect contained all sorts of precious artifacts, sword manuals, and secret records, but it contained no food. All of Jiangdong Hall had become trapped inside. A bloody slaughter ensued. The strong quickly overpowered the weak. The sect members had consumed each other until only Huang Xiaoye remained. Okay, cannibalism wasn't on my list of things to worry about for this chapter. Oh. Some time after he'd eaten his very last disciple, Huang Xiaoye at last struggled his way out of the chamber, only to stumble upon this freakish tableau. What was this? Shi Mingjings? Huang Xiaoye hadn't the faintest idea what he was looking at. The outside limits of his imagination was to assume they were twins. It would never occur to him that these two were Shimeis from different worlds, united by the space-time gates. The longer he listened to their conversation, the more alarmed he grew. Huang Xiaoyue had always been sly and calculating. He saw almost immediately that he needed to escape, yet Chimay had managed to catch him. Chimay leveled him with a glare. I was wondering who would have snuck in here. Looks like it's just an old rat. His gaze drifted down, registering the blood on Huang Xiaoyue's robes. Blood? There are no animals on Mount Zhao. Where did all the blood come from? He paused, comprehension dawning. Human blood. Every syllable dripped derision. Sensing danger, Huang Xiaoyue whirled to run. Where do you think you're going? I'm assuming there's blood on more than just his robes. I'm assuming his mouth is covered in it as well. Honestly, the more of this book I read, the less sense it makes for me to imagine how this book could have possibly been adapted in a censored Chinese BL setting, because there's so much horrible violence and, sexual violence, all of that going on that that would have been a challenge to adapt. Where do you think you're going? Like a hawk, Chimay soared through the air in a flutter of green robes and landed gracefully before Huang Xiaoyue. Those eyes, as beautiful as misty rain, looked up with a gaze cold enough to turn the mist to ice. You must not know how I hate cannibals, old geezer. They were the last words Huang Xiaoyue ever heard. That's an interesting moral ground to take, considering everything else you've done. The stench of blood filled the air. Chimay watched as Huang Xiaoyue collapsed, scarlet spurting from the fresh hole in his chest. Frowning in distaste, he wiped the blood from his hand. Disgusting. He turned and stared for a beat at the other Chimay, then softened his tone. See that? Over these 2 lifetimes, there have been no shortage of beasts like Huang Xiaoyue in the cultivation world. The cards are due to be reshuffled. Don't overthink things. I told you I wouldn't let your sacrifice go to waste. Once our plan succeeds, I'll find a way to heal your eyes. Somehow I don't trust him. No response came. Chimay rolled his eyes. Stop being so stubborn, he said dispassionately. Fine, have it your way. I promise I won't harm any more innocents if I can help it. Will that do? Are you happy now? Some of the tension finally melted from the white-cloaked Chimay's stance. His lips parted as if to respond, but his other self was too annoyed to hear more. He stalked out of the ancestral hall without looking back. I so badly want this to backfire on the current Chimay. I never imagined I would be rooting for one Chimay to take down another, but here we are. Chapter 266, To Warm You Up. At the foot of Mount Zhao, hidden behind dense vines, a remote footpath wound its way up to Qingtang Palace, used by the Nangong Sir, there we go. I could not for the life of me find his surname, and I knew his name and I just could not think of it. But yeah, I was trying to describe Nangong Sir earlier. Anyway, used by the Nangong clan when they came to the mountain to pay their respects to the dead. The palace was small, but its paths were rambling, and the garden was filled with dragon blood flowers that glowed softly in the dark. Their bloom season had already passed, and only a scattering few retained their petals. From a distance they looked like shattered stars bejeweling the velvet black of night. Chimay strode into the depths of the garden, where a natural hot spring was nestled in the landscape. He disrobed his bare feet, pale as jade, as he padded to the water's edge and looked down at his reflection. The waters were hot, but his gaze was frigid. He reached a hand up to touch his chest. A long swath of flesh there had festered as a result of backlash from the forbidden technique. But now he could stop worrying. All was going according to plan, and soon everything would get better. He stepped into the water. The hot springs of Mount Zhao were imbued with the energy from the demon dragon, and bathing in them was spiritually nourishing. Shimei leaned against the wall of the pool and closed his eyes. A rustling emanated from somewhere nearby. Eyes closed, Shimei called, "Who's there?" Nanggong Liu popped out of the shrubbery with a dragon blood flower tucked behind one ear. At the sight of Shimei, he smiled in delight. "Dear friend Gugu, are you taking a bath? Can I help you at all?" "No," Shimei said. Nanggong Liu scratched his head. "Then I'm going to leave. I'm going now. Otherwise, if you're naked and I'm not, it's not fair." Through the curling mist, Shimei laughed. Deep within the springs, his face gleamed like the first sheen of ice in a Jiangnan winter, shining, fragile, and freezing cold. Those peach blossom eyes fluttered open as he gave Nanggong Liu a smile that was not a smile. "How so?" "Because you're beautiful," came the frank reply. "Oh? Does a little boy like you already know so much about beauty?" "I'm 5, huffed Nanggong Liu. "I'm not little." Oof. Amused, Shimei's smile deepened. "Okay, Gugu was wrong. Come here, let me ask you a question. Between myself and Ta Xinjun, who do you prefer?" "Dear friend Gugu, of course," Nanggong Liu said instantly. "Who is Ta Xinjun? I don't know anyone by that name." "Let me put it another way. Me and Moran. He greeted you before. You remember him, don't you?" Sucking his thumb, Nanggong Liu gave the question serious thought and nodded. "Whose face do you like better? Don't decide based on who you've known longer. I just want to know who you think looks best." Of course it's gonna be frickin' Shimei. But it's funny that he still has so much ego on top of everything else. This time, Nanggong Liu couldn't give an instant reply. After more thought, he announced, "I still think dear friend Gugu is best." This seemed to satisfy Shimei. "Oh? Tell me, what's wrong with him?" "I don't know." "Then why do you like me better?" Nanggong Liu seemed hurt. "I don't know either. I just think you're prettier." Shimei sank into that thought. After a moment, he rose from the water and leaned against the edge where the mist was thin, revealing the graceful lines of his back. "Come here," he said with a smile, waving Nanggong Liu over with a dripping hand. When he deemed Nanggong Liu close enough, he straightened up, rising from the water. "Aya!" Shimei laughed. "What's all the fuss? We're both men. There's nothing to be embarrassed about." Nanggong Liu scrubbed his face. "Not," he mumbled. "You got water in my eyes." Shimei didn't care about his eyes. He grabbed Nanggong Liu by the wrist and forced him to look at his body, bearing that frightful wound on his chest. "Look at this. Are you afraid?" That wound had festered badly and oozed pus. Nanggong Liu scarcely glanced at it before turning away in disgust. "Yuck," he said, with the frank candor of children. Do you still think I'm pretty?" Shimei was still smiling, but his eyes were cold. Rather than answer, Nanggong Liu tried to struggle out of Shimei's grasp, but Shimei was strong. There was nothing he could do. Eventually he teared up, voice quivering in fear. "Let go of me. I don't like this." "Take a good look." "I don't want to. Crack. Shimei's iron grip had dislocated Nanggong Liu's wrist. Okay, I almost forgot what I wanted to say. It's interesting to me because Shimei promised his younger self, I promise I won't harm any innocents if I can help it. Which I originally thought, okay, if I can help it is a pretty loose thing where you can worm a lot of justification into killing people. But seeing this, And considering everything that we've heard of Shimei's philosophies on life up until this point, I wonder if he views anyone as innocent enough to not feel like he can justify killing them at any moment. Shimei's eyes flashed with resentment and dissatisfaction. "Didn't you say I was pretty?" he asked, a manic light flashing in his eyes. "What? One little wound changes everything? No? Does the slightest imperfection make beauty revolting?" Shimei pressed closer. "Turn affection into disgust, longing into irritation?" Nangung Liu couldn't help it. He burst into tears. I don't get it. Let go of me. I want to go." I mean, the thing is, and I think we're dealing with a very good metaphor here. Maybe I'm giving Meat Bun too much credit, but I highly doubt it. She's been very good about metaphors and things like that before, where Shimei being pretty is equivalent to Shimei being cared for by Chuaning, and him asking Nanggong Liu, like, okay, but do the few things that I've done for your sake, for Chuaning's sake, really suddenly make the caring that Chuaning has felt towards me invalid? But what I find interesting is the metaphor then goes a step further into showing that Shimei isn't getting it, because it's not that people can't still care about you despite things that you've done. It's the fact that you are knowingly hurting him while doing these things that ultimately makes whether or not he thinks you're pretty, whether or not he cares about you, not really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, it completely null and voids it to an extent. His fussing worsened Shimei's poor mood. Storm clouds gathered in his eyes. He drew his hand back and slapped Nanggong Liu across the face. "Imbecile, get out," he said coldly, finally releasing his grip on Nanggong Liu's wrist. Once the sounds of Nanggong Liu's sobbing faded into the distance, Shimei slunk back into the depths of the springs. His surroundings remained gorgeous, and the fragrance of dragon blood flowers in bloom yet filled the air, but his innate satisfaction had evaporated. In his heart was only fury, endless fury. He punched the water's surface. After a great splash, the waves subsided. The ripples smoothed out to again show the reflection, still surpassingly soft and lovely, with a rotting wound over his heart. Quite telling that that is where it's placed. Confusion and helplessness welled up to join Shimei's wrath. Leaning against the side of the pool, he tipped his head back and gazed into the sky. "Everyone changes," he mumbled. Just as seeds sprouted and new buds swelled, just as flowers unfurled their petals amidst green leaves to bloom, then died, then crumpled into mud. Time's passage was marked by the change it wrought. Some would see their teeth sharpened, while others had their edges worn away. Everything changes. He wearily cupped a handful of water and rinsed his face. Comparing his past and present lives made the changes stark. But when did he step out onto that dark road? When did the change become irreversible? After dressing in a fresh bathrobe, Shimei bound up his incan hair and took the fragrant path back to the secret chamber on Mount Zhao. He stood at the door for a moment before pushing it open. It was dead of night. The lamps in the room had been snuffed out, leaving a single candle burning behind the gauzy bed canopy. Shimei slipped silently into the room. All that marked his presence was the faint scent of soap from his bath. Yet this was enough to wake the man behind the bed curtains. Tashin Jin's voice, rough with sleep, rang out. "Who's there?" "It's me," Shimei replied with displeasure. There was a short silence, then the sound of robes rustling as someone turned over on the bed. How refined you are, master, Ta Xinjun sneered. Eavesdropping in this venerable one's bedroom in the small hours of the morning. He paused deliberately. Not getting all hot and bothered, are you? Shimei's expression worsened. You should learn to control yourself. None of us will have any fun if he winds up dead. There was a faint hint of exhaustion audible in Ta Xinjun's smug tone. Master needn't worry. This venerable one doesn't have any strange kinks in bed. I prefer to keep things simple. No rambling snakes or blindfolded riddled games. The shade. Only Moran while being controlled by someone would still snark at them. No one's dying here. Rambling, snakes, blindfolded riddle games. Even an imbecile could understand whom he was talking about. Furious, Shimei flung the canopy aside as one might unsheath a sword, ready to send sparks flying. Shiming Jing's gentle visage came face to face with Ta Xinjun's handsome mien. You. He froze before finishing his thought. He assumed Ta Xinjun and Chuaning's long-awaited reunion would have culminated in debauchery. But upon drawing the canopy aside, what he saw was quite different. Chuaning was sound asleep, cheeks flushed with fever. Ta Xinjun lay beside him with his robes open, revealing a broad swath of pale chest. He held Chuaning in his arms, face gloomy as he stroked his hair. He looked simultaneously disdainful, yet defiant, as if he'd never let go of the man in his embrace. "What are you doing?" asked Shimei. "What do you think the certain one might be doing?" Ta Xinjun shot back with utmost scorn. "Forget it. Why argue with a corpse?" Shimei closed his eyes, forcing himself to calm, but a tiny flame of fury still burned in his chest. He couldn't put it out. Retorts slipped from his lips. "I hadn't expected Emperor Ta Xinjun would still need his teacher's presence to sleep, even at his mature age. If you're not afraid of the dark, could it be that you missed being a teacher's little pet?" Shimei's jib had the intended effect. Ta Xinjun's eyes narrowed dangerously. He unconsciously moved to push the sleeping Chuaning aside, or perhaps even kick him off the bed. That would certainly make him look more imposing. But as he watched Shimei approach, he instead clutched the man in his arms tighter, sleeves flaring as he swept a hand over to cover Chuaning's face. He looked up, displeased. "What this venerable one does is no concern of yours." You know, I don't like Ta Xinjun, but I sure as hell dislike Shimei more. "Watch your mouth." Shimei ground his teeth. "Don't forget who made you. Hanlin the sage uses this fact to threaten this venerable one nearly once a day," said Ta Xinjun icily. "I'm shaking in my boots. Oh, how dare!" After so many snide comments, Shimei lost his patience. He jabbed at Ta Xinjun's forehead and pushed in a thread of spiritual energy. "Gather soul." The words of the incantation dropped from his sinuous lips, but Ta Xinjun's gaze remained determined and furious on him for a long time. So long that Shimei shuddered, feeling as if the man would finally escape his control. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he and Ta Xinjun clashed in a silent battle of wills. Using nearly all the spiritual energy he possessed, Shimei shouted again, "Gather soul!" This time, Ta Xinjun flinched. His eyes lost focus. This is very satisfying. Panting, Shimei retracted his spiritual energy, clutching his aching chest as his vision went dark. Both his spiritual core and his spiritual energy were weak due to his natural constitution. Regardless of how assiduously he'd cultivated, he was no match for a cultivator like Ta Xinjun. When it came to medicines, he was a force to be reckoned with, but as soon as spiritual energy was required, he could barely hold his own. Shimei closed his eyes in rest for several moments before he turned back to Ta Xinjun. "I'll ask you once more, what were you doing?" Subdued, Ta Xinjun replied without inflection, "He has a fever. He's cold." So, this puppet who possessed only the cognizant soul from its previous lifetime answered blandly, "In this venerable one's arms, he'll be warmer." Shmei stared at him. Warmer? His pale lips twitched as he burst out laughing, though his peach blossom eyes held no mirth at all. "Moran, are you mad? Feel the temperature of your skin. What do you think you are? You're cold as ice all over. You're dead. You have no heart or lungs or warmth. You yourself are freezing cold. How do you intend to warm him up?" Pain seemed to flare in Ta Xinjun's hollow eyes, but it was a flicker only. He was merely a corpse, after all. "Get up," Shmei ordered. Ta Xinjun didn't move. Brows furrowed, he sat still, struggling between his own willpower and Shmei's control. "Get up!" The command intensified. In response to Shmei's vicious tone, Ta Xinjun finally obeyed. He rose slowly, his robes still loose and open. Chuaning's warmth lingered on his unmoving chest. "Get out," Shmei said darkly. Ta Xinjun took a few shuffling steps, then came to a stop. "I have it," he said quietly. "What?" "I do have it," he said with the same stiffness. Shmei didn't understand. "What do you have?" "Warmth." Ta Xinjun slowly reached out to touch his chest, which had been pressed to Chuaning's skin. "It's warm here." Shmei flinched as if stabbed, now furious. Nothing vexed him more than a misbehaving puppet. "Get out," he snarled. Ta Xinjun stepped forward again, but made it scarcely 2 steps before his face twisted. "No," he muttered, clutching his head. Tendons protruded on his hands. He trembled, breathing hard. "This venerable one refuses. How could this venerable one let you?" His eyes were screwed shut, his mind seesawing between focus and confusion, his memories flickering. He struggled again and again, tormented by 2 lifetimes. "Do as you wish!" His voice came to a shaking stop. Shmei grunted, pressing a hand to his chest. Ta Xinjun, throwing off his control, had unleashed a great wave of energy upon him. He stumbled backward, watching as Ta Xinjun's eyes snapped open to reveal his bloodthirsty gaze. There was no hint of helplessness in those eagle-like eyes, only Shmei's own cool reflection. So the mirror Shmei thing maybe was not referring to the younger version of himself. Oh, but then again, we're on the next chapter, so that definitely was. Bone pale, Shmei said slowly, "I see you are recovering faster these days." Ta Xinjun said nothing. His pupils flashed as he reached a hand out, panting shallowly, and summoned Bugui. Shmei lifted his chin, his gaze running up along the blade until it landed on Moran's predatory face. "What now? Are you angry? Do you want to kill me?" That pitch-black blade flashed up, coming to a stop with its point against Shmei's snow-white throat. The movement was sharp enough to break skin, leaving a thin trickle of blood. Yet Shmei didn't back down. "Your Majesty," he said scornfully, "my spiritual energy is the only reason you can even move. You'll die if you kill me, as I'm sure you're well aware." Ta Xinjun said nothing. "It's true, I'm no match for you in terms of power," Shmei continued, "but I advise you to think carefully whether you'd rather live like this or die in your escape." Ta Xinjun's hand was steady. After a beat, he withdrew Bugui and turned his face away. Shmei reached up cautiously to touch the blood on his neck. "Fortunately, you're not an idiot." I mean, all the books up until this point and the title of this novel would lead you to believe otherwise. Faced with Ta Xinjun's silence, Shmei admonished him. "Don't pull this with me again. You know how things are between us." He glanced at Ta Xinjun. "Right now, you're like a rusty blade. I want to make you as useful as you were in the past and keep using you as my knife. But you You probably want to escape my control entirely and kill me. Ta Xinjun turned to stare icily at him. All these years, you worked for me in the other world, Shimei continued. The crack left in the space-time gate is too narrow for frequent travel, so I often sent you letters. But don't forget, we also communicated telepathically through the Go Flower. Of course I know what you're thinking. Don't be so surprised. I thought you couldn't control the Go Flower anymore. So I doubt you're still able to telepathically read his mind. Ta Xinjun finally spoke. You seem to be going blind yourself. Where the hell are you looking that you see this venerable one surprised? Shimei pursed his lips in a scowl. All right. If you understand the pros and cons of our arrangement, then simply endure the situation. We'll work together, and once everything is finished, we'll see if you manage to kill me or if I obtain an undefeatable weapon. Looking forward to it, said Ta Xinjun. I don't know how that works, though, because if he kills him, he's back to square one, so he might as well kill him right now. There's no point in waiting. A low groan from Chuaning on the bed silenced both of them. The sound was as soft as a queen of the night flower blooming, but both men stopped their bickering and turned. Huaning, Shizun. The erstwhile martial brothers stared at each other. Ta Xinjun glowered, then shifted his gaze from Shimei to the sleeping Chuaning. He spoke with affected carelessness. He's had a fever for days, and he doesn't seem to be getting better. If it goes on like this, will he? The question died on his lips. Emperor Ta Xinjun, butcher of thousands, stopped short of those final words. His lashes fluttered, and his eyes closed. But Shimei didn't care to beat around the bush. Will he what? Are you asking if he's going to die? It's very interesting to see the direct contrast between these two. Someone who claims to care about Chuaning as much as Shimei, as much as Ta Xinjun does, but is so much more callous about talking about things like that, as if he hasn't also experienced the loss of Chuaning. Perhaps it was a trick of the light. Ta Xinjun's white face seemed to pale further. He compressed his lips, as if the word irritated him. Will he? He asked, carefully avoiding it again. Of course not. You underestimate the Baidu immortal. Aren't you ashamed to ask this question? Shimei arched a brow. Who's responsible for this fever? Weren't you the one who took him like a starving animal? Ta Xinjun's expression was beyond ugly. He isn't me, he hissed. Don't confuse me with that piece of garbage. Shimei looked him up and down. As it happens, I too think he's a piece of garbage. You know as well as anyone the lengths I've gone to. I tore open a great space-time gate and brought you into this world to destroy that trash and help you return to ascendancy. Your Majesty, he said in a teasing sing-song. We're so very close to our goal. You also want to complete a complete source of power, a powerful spiritual core, do you not? Too bad you made sure that Moran had to destroy his own core. So where are you getting this powerful core from, if not his other self? He regarded Ta Xinjun as a hunting snake would, scarlet tongue flicking as he hissed sweet promises. He saw the desire in Ta Xinjun's eyes, so he smiled, going in for the kill. If you want to regain your full potential, behave a little. Venom seemed to shine on his teeth, and his eyes glinted eerily. Our work goes more smoothly when you behave. Ta Xinjun fell silent, sweeping his sleeves back. Enough. He pointed at Chuaning. Let's talk about him first. What about him? He's merely had a shock from his soul returning into his body, said Shimei blandly. There's not much to talk about. If you really want him to feel better, step outside. Ta Xinjun grew instantly weary. What are you plotting? Great, so he has some sense. It's also very interesting because this does feel like it's giving a serpentine vibe to it. So having all of these images of serpent being linked to Shimei just seems fitting. Oh no, and I'm just realizing that Chuaning's cloak, if that is Chuaning and not his other self, because I'm thoroughly unsure at this point, has, like, it looks like butterfly wings that have been clipped. Oh. Shimei smiled. Healing, of course. This venerable one will stay. That won't do, Shimei said. Hanan the sage's healing arts are not for outside eyes. And Ta Xinjun's silence, Shimei continued. But it's fine if you wish to say. I'll go. After all, Mr. Emperor, you're so very powerful. I'm sure you know how to properly take care of him. The fact that Hanan the sage's healing arts are not for outside people makes me think that I'm not gonna like whatever he does to heal Chuaning. Ta Xinjun's expression twisted into an ugly scowl. His spiritual power was harsh and domineering, completely unsuited to healing. In the past life, he'd had so many servants and doctors there had been no need for him to learn the art at all. Shimei had wholly recovered his serenity. He watched him, smiling. Ta Xinjun couldn't stand to look at that smile. He turned around, jaw working as he avoided Shimei's eyes. His response came after a long moment. Okay, this venerable one will leave, and you will heal him. He paused, and his voice went sharp. But this venerable one will be right outside. If you dare. The chill in his expression threatened a punishment worse than death. If you dare touch a hair on his head, this venerable one will take your damn life. Shimei let the threat roll off him. He smiled a little wider and waved Ta Xinjun out. After hovering at the door for a long beat, Ta Xinjun at last left the room. Shimei stood in the secret chamber, finally quiet, and stared at the stone door he had closed behind him. Then he turned and walked over to that white-clad man. The mocking smile on his face fell away, and in its place a calm yet utterly deranged expression. Shizun, he cooed. Step by step he drew nearer. He had Chuaning in the palm of his hand. Did it matter that Ta Xinjun was outside? There were so many ways he could keep Chuaning from making a sound. By the time the Emperor of the Mortal Realm returned, all his fury and cruelty would be futile. He'd have no one to blame but himself, for being so useless, so naive, that he'd left his beloved in a nest of snakes for Hanan to devour. You know, I'm not blaming Ta Xinjun for whatever Shimei does, because that would shift the blame directly from Shimei. I am, however, blaming Meatbun for anything that Shimei does to Shizun, because it feels a little bit like torture porn at this point, and I'm not comfortable with it. A slender hand drew the canopy aside. Shimei cast gentle, ravenous gaze down onto the feverish man within. This time, no one will interrupt us. Lowering himself onto the bed, he caressed Chuaning's face. Come, Consort Chu. Let me master you while your husband waits on the other side of the wall. Okay, so I technically have 3 pages left to go for today, but I don't think I can stomach it, considering what it seems like we're heading for, which is once again rape of Chuaning, because it's just thrown in so casually into every single freaking volume. But yeah, I don't think I can cope with that today, so we're leaving it here on chapter, let me just double check it, 267, page 281, and I will see you guys next Monday for the last stretch of volume 8, and hopefully we survive and I don't regret buying this entire series, because they're torturing us and Chuaning. But yeah, otherwise I'll see you then. 再见